Hi, my name's Nick Hopwood. I'm from the University of Technology, Sydney, here in Australia. I'm talking to you today about reading, particularly the reading we do as researchers, perhaps PhD students or Masters by Research students. Um, Reading is one of those things where I get a lot of students saying, Nick, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by how much I feel I have to read, how long it's taking me to read, no matter how much time I spend reading. My list of things to read is getting bigger and bigger, whether that's a physical pile or a folder. The list of PDFs you've downloaded and feel the pressure to read is growing and growing and growing. Um, and so that kind of, I'm not convinced, from my own experience certainly, and from what I hear from other people, that we necessarily read in the most productive ways typically. And I think reading is one of those things that's often dominated perhaps by default practices or historical practices rather than smart practices and strategic ones that will really meet our needs. I'm not talking about reading quickly. I'm not a particularly quick reader, actually. But what I have learned to do is to kind of, have a textured approach to my reading. And this is what I'm going to suggest, I'm hoping you might find useful. So that the time we spend with text is high quality time, and we're choosing what kind of time to spend with what kind of texts. So that we don't waste time on things, because once we've spent time reading something, that's time we're not getting back. And if it's time we didn't need to spend on that, that's been a waste. And who wants to waste time? So I'm going to talk to you about a number of kinds of reading and suggest why you might spend different kinds of time with those readings. I have to thank Julie Robert from here at UTS for introducing me to these ideas. So the first one is discovery reading. And that is a reading when we don't know a lot about a field. Maybe we don't know what research has been done. We don't know a lot about a theory. We want to figure out what the key concepts are and where it came from. We don't know a lot about the methods that have been used and kind of how does this methodology work or that one. And this is kind of a stepping back landscape view, trying to figure out who's saying what, where might there be agreement, where might there be disagreement, who are the people that people are citing all the time, like the key figures in the field. For discovery reading, I'm going to suggest it's going to rarely make sense to read every sentence of a paper, or certainly not a book. It can always come back later. If we don't read the whole of something, that thing is not going away, doesn't matter. But for discovery reading, we've got to think, where am I going to get the sense that I need? It may be just from the abstract. And perhaps the conclusions. It depends a bit. And I've cited things only having read the abstract. Yep, I've done that. But I've only done that where I might be citing something as part of, say, 2 or 3 citations, where I'm just identifying that a small corner of research exists over here. It's not particularly relevant to mine. I might be saying, yeah, a few people have asked this question like this. All I need to know is that they've asked it and they've done some research. I'm not relying on their findings. I'm not making judgment over to the claims they've made. I'm just saying they've done it in a particular way, for example. If I'm going to start reporting people's findings and having faith in them, then certainly I'm going to go and dig into their methods and make sure that I kind of trust them and all that kind of thing. So discovery reading might be relatively light touch, but it's purposive. You're trying to build a picture. What's been going on? What have people been saying? How long has this been done? What's new? What's traditional? All that kind of thing. Reading every sentence doesn't make sense when you're doing that. Archaeology reading, that's our slow, deep dive into literature. Yes, some of our reading is every single sentence. Some of it might be every single sentence several times. I've got heaps of books, heaps of papers that I've read lots of times. Archaeology, there is no merit in going fast. This is when we really want to get into the core of things. It might be we do archaeology to get right to the origins of a theory, or to follow through a key person's work, kind of go backwards and feel like where their idea's gone, or to get really into the detail of methods. Now, we might not archaeology read the whole of a paper. If we're interested in kind of methods, we might archaeology on part of it. But the point is, when we're going to rely heavily on an aspect of literature or a whole paper, there's no kind of way around that. We've got to do the slow, detailed, fine-tooth comb thing, archaeology. There is also quest reading. And this is again another kind of light touch reading, but it's different from discovery reading. Quest reading comes when there is something we are looking for. So discovery reading, we don't kind of know what's out there. We're trying to sort of lift off from the ground and look down and go, ah, that's there, this is how these all join up, that's where the fights are, that's where everybody agrees. Oh, that's the person that everybody thinks we have to reference. That's discovery reading. Quest reading is where we're going to say, for example, I've done it recently, I want to find people who've used this concept. Or I want to find the first person to use this concept. Or I want to find out what it looks like to use this method in practice. And therefore, it's a very extractive kind of reading. So we're not doing it to necessarily take articles at their face value in terms of like what the topic is or what it is that the author's trying to present. We might not even go as far as the conclusions. We might just extract something on the way. So a quest is where we're like, I need to find out some bits of information, answer some questions that I have that are quite contained, focused questions. We find a paper that we think might be useful or a book. We go, we've answered our question, we leave it. Now, it doesn't mean we never go back to it. We might well go back and find that we decided to do an archaeology read on that. No problem. But the point is we haven't wasted time doing archaeology on that when our mission for that day, for that interaction with that text, was a quest. So we've got discovery, step back, landscape view. Archaeology, slow and deep. We have quest. This is what I'm going looking for. Take it, go, move on. And the fourth one, yes, is cheat. Now, we can't, I say cheat, we all kind of do it. We don't cheat when the texts are high stakes, right? I don't cheat read when I'm going to rely heavily on something like a concept, an interpretation of something, or some findings. I'm going to say, because they found this, I'm going to assume that. No cheat reading there. But we might cheat read in the sense that at some cases, if we're having a relatively light touch with readings, we might leave readers with an impression that we perhaps read something in more detail than we did. We might have just skimmed a little bit or scanned. Skimming is just kind of looking through. Scanning is looking through, looking for something in particular. We don't really do, I don't call this like secondary referencing. So if you haven't read an original source, kind of it is better to kind of make sure that you say, I found this cited in another book. But kind of cheat reading is just giving ourselves permission sometimes to be a little bit quick and dirty with the reading if the context allows. So maybe this is just something where you might be late stages on, you're like, oh, I need to figure out, fill out a couple of holes here. Oh, I found that paper and that paper, they could help. There we go. And it's kind of like an extractive thing. It might be a bit discovery, but it's basically just acknowledging that sometimes we don't really have the time that we would like with texts. It's okay. It's human. It often helps preserve our well-being. We don't cheat when it's big stakes and high stakes, but everybody cheat reads, by which I mean most people will cite things on perhaps a slightly thinner reading than would be ideal. So we've got discovery, we've got archaeology, we've got quest reading, the extractive one, and a little bit of cheat reading sometimes. And the point is, I think this will help spend quality time with the text and be really deliberate and explicit when you choose. Like, if you're going to read a text long and slow, make sure that's for good reasons and not just because you think you have to read all text long and slow. You might spend 4 days on a text. Great. You might spend 4 minutes on one. Fine as well, depending on what you think you're going to use. And it's a judgment at the time. If you do a discovery read or a quest read, and then later on you end up feeling like you're citing this quite heavily and you feel a bit shaky, you go back and you do an archaeology. The point is the text's not going anywhere, but your time is. Time you spent on a text that you didn't need to is time you're not getting back. So I'm thinking, be really strategic. Think carefully about why you're reading. Perhaps the ideas of discovery, archaeology, quest, and yes, cheat might help spend better time with the texts and help you get over that kind of long pile of things to read. Now the final thing is fear of missing out. Maybe that pile is getting bigger because we think we have to read everything. Everybody thinks there's going to be something that they didn't read. Of course there is. You're never going to read everything, so you can't, being governed by fear of missing out is not a good way of judging what to read. Maybe the archaeology discovery quest will help with that, but ultimately we have to accept that we're not going to read everything. We're not going to read everything we feel we need to. We're not going to read everything in as much detail as we'd like, which is why the cheat is We can get comfortable with discovery and quest forms of reading and choosing what to do with archaeology. I think that might help us with our reading and our reading practices. I'd love to hear your comments, get your feedback, see if you've been trying these out. As always, yeah, please do interact with the YouTube channel or with the blog nickhop.wordpress.com. I hope you found this useful. See you soon.